Nursing informaticist is that nurse who can bridge that gap between technology and healthcare, but the actual world of informaticists is wide open.
There's a lot of apprehension when it comes to the use of AI in healthcare. Are patients going to be taken care of by robots or, by machines? What's going to happen to our jobs? Are we going to be replaced?
When it comes to nursing, so much of nursing is really giving that compassion. Mm-hmm. It really is wholeheartedly taking that patient who is scared and making them comfortable with whatever is happening. And that is not something technology will ever be able to do. AI is a game changer. To me, for nursing informaticists, this is an area that we really need to jump into full feet ahead, both feet right into the pond.
Welcome to the Nurse on Purpose podcast, where we challenge media stereotypes about nursing and spotlight the incredible and diverse roles nurses play in healthcare. I'm your host, Nello. Every week, I'll be joined by a nurse who is reshaping the narrative. From frontline care to leadership, education, innovation, and beyond. Our aim is to show the world that nursing is so much more than what we see on TV. Together, we'll explore how we can collaborate with media and other stakeholders to create authentic and inspiring portrayals of nurses. Let's begin the conversation and ignite change, one episode at a time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you again for joining me, allowing me into your space. Once again, I'm your host, Nello, and my guest today is another example of the diverse roles that nurses can play in healthcare. Robin Gadd-Lane is a nurse informaticist. And, for those of you who don't know what that is, kind of like me, don't worry, we're going to get into it. With 19 years in healthcare, Robin has worn several hats, including caregiver, change agent, innovator, and nurse leader. She consistently drives the use of technology to improve patient care and streamline clinician workflows. She has spearheaded several successful initiatives, including telehealth technology integration and standardized clinical communication across diverse teams. Outside of her professional work, she's a dedicated wife and mom who enjoys traveling, just like me, exploring the outdoors, coaching elementary robotics, reading, and spending quality time with her family. She's a proud graduate of the University of South Carolina and also holds a Master's of Nursing Informatics from Walden University. I am so glad to have Robin Gadd-Lane as a guest on my podcast. Welcome, Robin.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So today we're going to be discussing all things nursing informatics, right? Because I think people have a general idea. At least I'm speaking for myself. I have a general idea. I know nurse informaticists, they implement EMRs in hospitals and things like that. But my understanding is actually quite limited about what a nurse informaticist does on a daily basis. So I wanted to learn from you more about this topic. And that's why I've really just wanted to have you on the podcast so you can share with people that may also have a limited idea like myself, right? So can you just tell us just very simply, what does a nurse informaticist do?
So, in the most simplest form, nursing informaticists, their primary role is they are bridging the gap between clinical and technical, right? Mm-hmm. They are not necessarily, it's kind of funny. It's hard to define it into one simple thing because just like nursing, and there are many, many roles within nursing. There are many, many roles within nursing informatics. And what I mean by that is you have some nursing informaticists who go to the line of becoming application analysts, where they actually do build and they write code and they're very comfortable in that world and they like that world. You have others who go into training and they spend a bulk of their time really just building out the training with that technology and making sure staff is comfortable with the technology that's being rolled out. And then you have others who, like myself, who specialize in understanding the technology and understanding the clinical workflows, bridging them together so that one, I can help steer the technology so that it actually benefits the clinicians that are using it, but then also working with clinicians to understand that with technology, there has to be some standardization. There has to be set processes, and while customization is nice, it's not something that you want to do a ton of. So it's helping them find out what it is that they really do need to focus on and what they need technology to help them better their working fields, right? A lot of times I spend a lot of my time really just understanding the problem. What is the problem? And then how do I look to technology to solve it? And to be fair, technology can't solve all problems. I really hate when folks think that technology needs to fix everything, because it can't. There are a lot of things that still need human interaction and need the human practices and the policies and procedures to guide folks versus the technology.
Yeah.
But I also, right now, and in the world of informaticists, this is kind of like the golden age in the fact that, yes, I have spent much of my career helping implement EMRs. Then I moved into roles where I was integrating technology with EMRs. And now we're coming into the world of AI. And AI is a whole new ball game. And it really affects the whole facet of healthcare, not just the bedside nurse, but it also affects the management nurse, the doctors, the clinicians, the techs, contact centers. When you look at healthcare, finance, marketing, all of them, AI is a game changer. And so to me, for nursing informaticists, this is an area that we really need to jump into full feet ahead, both feet right into the pond.
Absolutely.
Because it is going to continue to open up and grow.
Yeah.
And no, AI will never replace healthcare. It's not going to replace us, but it can 100%, if trained appropriately, help alleviate the burden that a lot of healthcare clinicians feel like they have at the bedside when it comes to documentation or opening up resources because you don't have enough resources to answer phones or go through some basic things, and AI can help with that. So I think right now, nursing informaticists, again, like I said, the definition of it is that nurse who can bridge that gap between technology and healthcare, but the actual world of informaticists is wide open.
Very wide open. Oh, wow. That's excellent. So yeah, informaticists don't do one thing. They do a slew of things. And, I wasn't even going to get into the AI yet, but just, you mentioned that. And I know there's a lot of apprehension when it comes to the use of AI in healthcare and clinicians feeling like, what is going on? Are patients going to be, taken care of by robots or, by machines? What's going to happen to our jobs? Are we going to be replaced? If AI can, I don't know, read an x-ray report, radiology report better than a human being, what's going to happen to all the interventional radiologists? So the fact that you said, AI will never be able to replace the human touch, but it's only there to enhance, I think is very encouraging, right? And I think it's important that because it's changing, we just need to get with the program and find what's the best way that AI can help actually alleviate some of our stresses and our burdens in healthcare versus being afraid of what's coming or what's here, really.
Yes. And wholeheartedly, when you think about fearing what's coming, right? For the longest time, healthcare feared an EMR. A lot of technicians were terrified of having to do their documentation inside a computer. And now, when the computer system goes down, everybody freaks out because they have to document on paper, right?
They're like, we've got to go back to that, like we didn't want it before.
And people really, truthfully, they have gotten so used to that documentation system that when you take it away, they feel crippled.
Yeah.
And I think with AI, so I love that you brought up it reading film
Yeah.
and it analyzing CT scans. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, wholeheartedly, can it do that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But will it ever be able to diagnose?
Mm-mm.
No. Because in all honesty, that's where the human still has to come in, right?
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
human still has to come in and analyze all the different parts and pieces so that they can process what is that diagnosis that needs
Mm,
to go with what that technology is showing them.
absolutely.
And then when it comes to nursing, so much of nursing is really giving that compassion. It
Mm-hmm.
really is
Yes.
wholeheartedly taking that patient who is scared and making them comfortable with
Mm,
whatever is happening.
absolutely.
And that is not something technology will ever be able to do.
Right.
But what a lot of nurses have said, and a lot of clinicians have said, is that they feel like they've moved away from holding the hand and having
Mm,
the time to talk to the patient because they're having to do the documentation, right? They're
yeah.
having to go in and make sure everything that they're discussing with that patient is documented and
Mm,
outlined and underlined and processed. Well, this is where AI can truly make a difference for good.
yeah.
Where if you walk into a room and you have a device that will let the AI actually listen to the conversation you are having, and you're spending time, you're assessing the patient and you're talking to it, and it can take and document that assessment, that
Mm-hmm.
frees you up to spend more
Absolutely.
time
Absolutely.
answering that patient and
Yeah.
holding that patient's hand and prepping that patient for
Absolutely.
whatever treatment they have coming their way. And that is a big part of nursing and medicine that I think over the years we've lost, not intentionally, but just because in order to keep up with costs, we have to see more patients, even in a practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have to see more patients. They have to make sure they cut everything down to a 15-minute interval, get
Mm-hmm.
that patient in, get that patient out. When
Yeah.
patients are admitted, we
Mhm.
don't want patients here for days. We want them here for 1 to 2. So
Yeah.
you've got to do everything that you used to do in a matter of days,
Yeah.
shrunk down to 24 hours.
Yeah.
So how do you still do that and keep that human connection? And I think this is where AI can make a true difference. I
Absolutely.
think this is where we shouldn't fear it.
Yeah.
We should study it. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. Like, wholeheartedly,
Mm.
it's not going to be perfect. And it
Yeah.
is going to take time to train it. And it's going to take time for it to understand, you know, dialect,
Yeah.
what patients are saying, where that conversation needs to go and how it needs to go. So at the end of the day, it's still going to need a human to review everything that it's documenting and sign off. But if I'm not having to spend an hour to 2 hours after my shift just catching up on my documentation and I spend 20
Absolutely.
minutes reviewing the documentation,
Yeah.
that's a huge game changer.
Oh yeah. Personal lives even, are you put back so much time into your personal life and you're not
Right.
at work for till 8 p.m. even though you finished at 5 and now you're charting for 3 hours. I remember having to come home and bring documentation home and chart for hours. I mean
Mhm.
like long hours, almost another full day of charting, right? That was really unpaid. I was just doing it on my own, time. So there's a lot of administrative work that clinicians have to do, that I think if we can be done with work like 5:30 maybe, and we're actually done and we're not taking anything home, and that's thanks to AI, then why not? So
Right.
yeah,
No.
that's all.
If you don't document it, it's not done, right?
Yeah,
That's what you're
of
taught
course.
1,000 times over. If it's not documented, it never happened.
Yeah.
And so you're right. So many team members spend hours after their shift just making sure things were documented, things
Mhm.
were updated. I was an ER nurse. I saw a lot of patients in a 12-hour shift,
Yeah.
and many times I would still be spending at the end of a 12-hour shift on those patients that were having an admission or going somewhere and being transferred, going back and adding in documentation of the work that I had done because
Yeah.
there were many times I would have a 6-patient load. I'd have 2 that were being admitted. I'd have 1 that's being discharged, and I'd have, 2 EMSs that come in all at the same time. So as a nurse, it's a juggling act, right?
It is.
You're constantly juggling that patient load.
Yeah.
Even for the med surg nurse, who they may not have that constant churn that an ER nurse has, but they still have the daily med pass, the documentation, checking blood sugars, making sure they get all these components of patient care done while they still ensure that the patient goes off the floor for their x-rays, their CTs, PT has come, OT has come. So there's tons of interaction that goes on in healthcare that the nurse has to be on top of. That often keeps her from doing doing that documentation that they need to be doing supposedly real time. I used to kind of chuckle at that, document real time. Okay, well, if I document real time, I'm never going to leave my patient's room. Because I'm not spending 5 minutes at their bedside. I'm spending 30 minutes at their bedside. And then now I'm backed up on all my other patients and everything.
When it comes down to it, it's impractical. You always would be running behind. If you followed the rules just as they're set out, you always will be falling behind. So if we can get some help with that from AI, that will be wonderful. I think that we're heading in the right direction, so I don't think that people need to be worried about it. But I also want to know, how did you even get into this role in this, arena, nurse informaticist? How did you enter into it? What made you interested?
Sure. So, like I said, I was an ER nurse, and I have done several facets of ER. I traveled for many years, as well as just worked in the same ER for many years. And what I was noticing, I was coming from a time when paper was still very much out there, as well as EMRs were out there. And what I was noticing is that EMRs were coming up and doctors had a lot of input into their documentation, but nurses were not getting as much input. And so it came down to me wanting to find a way to continue that advocacy, right? Nurses are advocates at heart. And so it was deciding, who do I want to advocate for? Well, I want to advocate for other nurses. And so I started looking into what do I want to be when I grow up? Originally, I thought I wanted to be a nurse practitioner. But then as time went on and I actually did practice and was doing more time with patients and seeing more and more EMRs. And, this was back in the day when there were multiple EMR systems, not just your 3 main core. There were, there's an ER system for the ED and there's an ER system for med surg. You had all these different systems that just weren't really talking the way they needed to talk and transitioning documentation the way they needed to.
Right.
And I found that really management didn't get a whole lot of say in it. And the only way you could get say into it was getting that degree and working with the tech teams and being the person who's in the huddles with them as they're discussing, we need to do an optimization of this charting over here. Well, okay, let's understand what's the most important piece or components we need to get out of that documentation, and how does it really flow? Like, what is the true flow for the nurse?
Yes.
And then how do you make the documentation mimic that flow so that it makes sense?
Yes.
I know so many times nurses would have to go from one screen to another. This screen to document my IV, this screen to document my fluids, this screen to document my assessment. And it wasn't always aligned, right? But then you work through the technology and in your assessment, you should have a place for the IV. You should have a place for fluids. You should have a place for your MAR, and let it all be in that system and then feed out to those other systems instead of making the nurse bounce back and forth between all the different screens. That's what led me to it. Like I said, if you don't document it, it never happened, right? So you've got to make that documentation make sense. It can't be this random piecemeal thing that the nurse has to go and search and constantly try to figure out well, where do I document this piece? And if I document it here, does it flow here? And if I do an S bar, where does that documentation live? And oh, can I not just get my system to document my S bar for me and populate it so that I can just read from it? There's so many parts and pieces to the actual documentation system that really needed a nurse's voice. Absolutely. And so that's what made me go down the path of informatics. You know, I looked into management, I looked into nurse practitioners, and then I really thought technology is not going away. It is going to keep coming and it's going to keep being in our faces. So if I want to make a difference, I have to study something that gives me the ability to work with technology. And that's what made me choose informatics over anything else. I also find it fascinating that people will ask, well, how do you feel not dealing with patients anymore? But what they don't understand is
everything you do affects
all the patients. Like we have to think about how everything reflects for a whole population.
Yeah.
And it's not just one patient or the 6-patient load. Now it's when you look at OB, it's all of OB. What am I doing to this documentation to make it better for these nurses who care for OB or surgery or just the whole healthcare population in general? Even in ambulatory, one of my roles allowed me to be a coordinator for a health system. And being that coordinator, I had to learn all the different roles inside of a health system. So not just ER, but med surg, labor and delivery, OR. And then I also had to learn ambulatory. And there is a ton of regulation and documentation change that goes for ambulatory that is not even in the world of the healthcare acute side of the house. So I will say that informatics opens your eyes to the whole system.
Yeah.
And it gives you a broader perspective of healthcare in general and how healthcare is so important and vital prior to the patient coming in, as well as how do you make sure the patient gets what they need when they leave, right? Absolutely. How do you get that whole 360 view and make sure that 360 compass of that patient is getting everything they need? And I think nursing informaticists have a great opportunity at being at the table and helping lend their expertise in creating that 360 view.
That's amazing. So needed, like you said. Nursing voices sometimes are not as loud, and we're not often at the table when big changes are happening in the healthcare systems where we work. They just happen and then we're told about them, right? But I think just putting your foot in the door and saying, you know what, I'm coming in and I want to do this for the nursing population because we need it. And then other people see that and start to say, you know what, that's true. We do need to make this change for our population because our workflows and bouncing from one screen to the next is only wasting more time that we could have been spending with the patients. And you said something that, I thought was really interesting. When you mentioned the OB nurse or, the nurse in the ambulatory care center, did you have to consult with other nurses to understand theirs? Okay, good. You're not. Because how do you know as an ED nurse how the flow goes with this other department and that other department? I'm assuming you had
I had to do a lot of shadowing, a lot of time, So funny. My first informatics role, my very first informaticist role was to build the technology around care plans. Well, as an ER nurse, I was in the ER for 12 years before I went over and started doing this care plan. I hadn't seen a care plan since nursing school.
Right.
So to then tell me, hey, guess what? You're going to be responsible for care plans for all the system. Oh, cool. What? And so I had to go and spend time with the nurses in those different roles. And then I had to go buy, I am literally not kidding you. I went and bought a book on care plans so that I could refresh my brain on, how do care plans work again? What makes sense here?
Yeah.
But yes, I did a lot of shadowing. And I will say OB nurses, labor and delivery nurses, I have a newfound respect for them. And the reason being is I got to see just how much documentation is on their shoulders and just how much they have to do to, make sure both patients are cared for, both patients are documented on, and mom has all her needs, and newborn baby has all their needs, and all the things that go on with women's health that they need to be a part of and that they need to document and they need to have knowledge on. I will honestly say, being that coordinator and shadowing the radiology nurses, the OB nurses, the ambulatory nurses, and learning all the different things that they do really opened my eyes and my mind up to how many facets of nursing there really is out there. And the regulatory laws and rules and everything that governs all of this. As a nursing informaticist, yes, you have to learn those things. Yes, you have to be aware, because you wholeheartedly may be changing something, and you need to understand all the regulatory and policies that affects, and make sure it lines up when you're doing that change. So it's a very heavy hat that you may wear that you don't realize you're wearing it because you're just doing your job.
I bet it made you feel like, I'm glad I did this because it truly is needed. You probably made you feel like, whoa, like I'm really happy that I did this and I went this path, because
I mean, honestly, when I first graduated with my master's, I was terrified because it was still kind of a new field. Yeah. And there weren't many roles out there. Yeah. But just like nursing, and I say this wholeheartedly, just like nursing, your first nursing job is a really hard job for you to get. I don't care what anybody says. I get that we have shortages, but for some reason, hiring a new nurse straight out of school, health systems don't like to take a chance on them.
One experience, how are you going to get it?
Yep. And as an informatics nurse, guess what? Yeah. I spent 6 months trying to find my first job. Then I got my first job, and every job after that has been easy because I had the experience, right? I could bring to the table all the experience and everything I've learned from that first job. So I wholeheartedly, while I make fun and laugh at the care plans, I'm so grateful I got to do the care plans.
Oh, yeah. I bet. That's awesome. So talking about it, getting your first job, how can a nurse get into the field of informatics? Do you have to get the master's degree, or is there any kind of certification? What would you recommend?
So, in the field of informaticists right now, there is the master's degree. There is a certification, but I think even for the certification, they're looking for you to have that degree. I would say for nurses that want to get into this role, you don't have to get into this role with a master's degree. Yeah. Meaning that you wholeheartedly can fall into this role because you're bridging that gap already. Yeah. You're doing some job that is allowing you to bridge that gap. And if you find you really like it, then invest and get that master's degree. And once you do that, in your master's degree, you have to build a portfolio. Yeah. You have to walk away and you have a portfolio of whatever your master project was that you have to turn in at the end. Personally, build yourself a portfolio off of that so that you can highlight that while you might be a new grad, based on your internship, you did X, Y, and Z. And the major project that you brought forth was this. I find wholeheartedly, I think that was what helped me get my first job. Yeah. And as I've moved through my career, that is something that I just keep, because you learn and do so much in this field that it's good for you to keep track of your accomplishments. I think as nurses, that's something we forget about. We do not toot our own horn.
Not enough.
It is right. It's not something that comes natural to us. And when we have successes, we usually contribute it to a whole, right? And we don't look at where did we play the part in that success. It's very hard for us. And that has been something that I've struggled with my whole career, is recognizing while I was a part of a team, I helped it be successful because my expertise or my thought process is what helped guide that team to do X, Y, and Z. And because of that, we were successful. Even nurses who work with patients at the bedside, they still don't toot their horn, right? Mm-hmm. They don't talk about the work that they do and how much they make a difference in that patient's life that they care for and the certifications that they get. I personally just, think that is a part of nursing. We wholeheartedly are that group that we do so much for a patient, but we do it in the shadows.
Yeah.
And unlike the providers and the nurse practitioners and the APPs, the PAs, they drop charges for the work they do, right? Mm-hmm. But nursing, we don't really drop charges for the work we do. We don't count the work that we do as something that's billable. And maybe that's something we need to look at, because wholeheartedly, we are the person who's monitoring that patient, the person that's advocating for that patient, the person that's making sure that provider gets all the updates that they need. And we are the ones that are educating that patient. We are the ones that are moving the patient through the process.
Absolutely.
And we're doing it all behind the scenes. And everybody thinks that it's, everybody puts a lot of emphasis on the providers, and they should. Providers are wonderful. We wouldn't have healthcare without our providers, but providers couldn't do what they do without nursing.
Absolutely.
And I think that is a scope that often gets lost in a lot of conversations.
I love that.
Sorry.
I love that. I just love where that went, because that is like my entire message. And you just articulated it so well. It's the unseen nurse, right? Someone is at the background getting everything done. And everyone wants to feel recognized. It's not because we want to be proud or whatever, but it's just that we want to feel seen, recognized. And, the Commission for Nurse Reimbursement now, I don't know if you're aware of that, that movement that I think it's Rebecca Love, Marian Leary, and a host of other people put together, that we want to be reimbursed for our work, right? In a billable way, just like the providers are getting. And hopefully, that gets passed. But yeah, it's being worked on already. And it was a petition that a lot of people kind of had to sign and, push to Washington. And they went on to, I think they had like a conference or something like that. But yeah, I think people are now paying attention to the fact that nurses too would like to be reimbursed for all the things and all this labor and all the work and all the clinical skills that we're putting into the patient's health care, right? So that's awesome.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That has been something I think nurses have let sit at the wayside for way too long. So it's good to hear that Rebecca and them are making that push.
Yeah, for sure. All righty. And I think one of the things that is attractive about tech is that you have the opportunity to work remotely, or at least hybrid. Is that something that you've seen in the nurse informatics world? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Especially the hybrid role, because there's many times when you still will have to be on site. It's hard you never want to assume anybody's workflow. Yeah. Because I'll tell you what, nurses are such MacGyvers, and they can find so many ways to do anything. So if you assume how somebody's doing something, you are going to find you're going to fail. So you're going to have to go in and spend some time shadowing and spend some time just learning how they do the work. That's not a bulk of your time, right? That is a portion of your time, and the rest of it wholeheartedly you can do remotely. You can do it from home. You can wholeheartedly handle your meetings, handle your conversations. The bulk of them can be remote. I know a lot of nurses who are those analyst roles that are 100% remote. They do not go into the health system.
Yeah.
They work remote, and they have worked remote, especially since COVID. And health systems are one of the few systems that really aren't necessarily forcing everybody to come back in. There may be a handful of leaders that they're forcing to come back in, but a lot of the staff, those buildings are costly. Having those buildings hold those employees in, that has a cost in itself. So if you can get your employees to actually do the work and you don't see a change in the work, then there's no reason why you wouldn't let them be remote.
Okay, so I have 2 questions, but I'm going to roll them into one because I think that they kind of overlap, right? So the first one is what skills or what qualities do you think are needed to be successful as an informaticist? And then the other one is, if you were to give advice to a nurse who is wanting to go into this field, what would you tell them so that they can prepare for success? What would you tell them to do? What mistakes would you tell them to avoid? And those kinds of things. So 2 questions in one.
Sure. So skills you need. Listening. You have to be a good listener. And communication. You have to be good at listening, and you have to be good at communicating. A lot of times what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to negotiate. It's not just, hey, this is how they do it, go do it. You're going to have to negotiate between the technology piece and the operations piece to find that marriage in the middle. So if you don't mind doing the negotiations and you don't have a problem having those conversations and working with people, because there are going to be times that there's pushback on both sides. And so you are the one that's going to have to navigate how to get past the push and how to move people forward. It's not always easy dealing with people and dealing with this is my way and this is my way. And we've got to marry somewhere in the middle is never an easy thing to do. So to do that, you have to be a good listener and you have to be a good communicator.
Yeah.
If you want to get into nursing informaticist, my advice to you is every health system has some form of it.
Absolutely.
Every health system, has some form where the role is being leveraged. So I would advise you first, see if you can get with one of your informaticists in your system and shadow them to see if what they're doing is something you really want to do. And if it is, then go out and research the different education levels out there for you and get into a program. In that program, you're going to do an internship. You can shop around. It's on you to figure out where you want to do your internship. So if your health system isn't doing what you thought you wanted to be doing, and there is another health system out there that is doing something different, do your internship with them. That's my biggest advice. When I went into informatics role, it really wasn't a big thing. I didn't have a good idea. So a lot of my fear was around getting my first job is, oh my gosh, is this really a thing?
You're going to think I'm just...
Did I make a mistake? And now, not only is it a thing, there are conferences. I got to go to the International Nursing Informatics Conference several years ago, and it was in Canada. And oh my gosh, opening my eyes to seeing how healthcare is being done across the world and how informaticists get to see that view and bring that back home so that wholeheartedly. Phones were a big thing in Africa before the rest of us got onto phones. And so,
that is funny.
It is like don't take for granted because we're this great big America that we know all. We don't. Yeah. And that going to an international conference like that, you really get to see there are some wonderful innovations being done around the world. That may be the most simplistic thing. Wow. But once you spend a little bit of time looking at it and learning it, how can you bring it back to your world? Because it can make a huge difference. And I remember, it was many years ago, 2012, I think was when I attended. And I remember thinking when I saw this gentleman from Africa who was discussing how they treat their patients using their cell phones. It took us until COVID to start treating patients in the United States, really getting comfortable with doing technology through a cell phone to treat our patients. Like, it amazes me what you can see around the world, and don't just decide somebody's not worth hearing because they're from a country that you think doesn't have the same funding we have.
Humility.
Right. Have some humility in it because there is so much we can learn from our neighbors.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So, I mean, be open, be humble, and seek to learn whatever you can, right? If you're wanting to go into that role, because if you don't sort of shadow and understand what the nurse informaticist does before you go into it, you might, go into it with either lofty ideas or just no idea, right? So it's important to do that. I think shadowing is key, So I want to switch gears and sort of talk about our media portrayals of nursing topic, right? I think that every guest that comes on, I want to address some of that with them because, of course, that's the bulk of our show. Do you watch any shows? Do you do you have any kind of thoughts about how nurses are portrayed in the media?
Well, yeah. So funny. I used to love Grey's Anatomy many years ago. I know it's still on. I don't watch it anymore, but I used to love Grey's Anatomy, and I would sit there with my girlfriend. She and I would always watch it together, and I would joke with her, okay, that they're having the doctor do, that's really what the nurse does. That's not what a doctor does. And oh my God, I've never seen a resident do X, Y, and Z. What are they portraying here? So you have to, I watched that one, and I watched Nurse Jackie. Again, to me, with Nurse Jackie, it focused on Nurse Jackie, but it focused on a drug addiction. It didn't focus on actually the positive sides. I used to laugh because I also watched Scrubs. Did you ever used to watch that comedy show? And personally, Scrubs had one of the better nursing characters on there, and they did a better job. A comedy show did a better job of actually showing a role of a nurse than these dramatic shows that really, truthfully, they wanted to highlight physicians, and I get that. But there's so much physicians do that you could really highlight the physician and really highlight the nurse, right? And highlight the partnership between them. There is a true partnership between nurses and physicians that has to be there. There is a trust that has to be there that no television show I've seen truly has tried to highlight that.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if I was to do a television show around nursing, I would do a MacGyver show, right? Let's show how many times nurses can't find an IV pump, so we're taking a tourniquet and tying it to a hook and hooking a bag to it, and then working out a drip and attaching it to our patient, right? How many times have we had to jimmy something to make it work so that we could get care to our patient? I think that, truthfully, where's your nurse MacGyver? That would be my show.
Oh, yes, because that was going to be my next question. I was going to play that fun game with you, but you beat me to it. So Nurse MacGyver. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we're pitching that.
Because they exist. I mean, I think every day a nurse has to find a way to create some kind of solution.
The innovation is endless.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that. Because it's like, I don't know, women, we make up the bulk of the profession, so we naturally have this sort of intuition about us. We have this ability to just create something, right? You're a mom, so let's go. We got to do something. And, this isn't working the way it's supposed to. Okay, blah, blah, blah. It may not be working the traditional way, but here's what we can do. You bring that with you even to your professional life, right? So, we truly are like Sherlock Holmes is of healthcare.
We really are. I mean, there's not a day that doesn't go by that a nurse isn't short some type of supply, that they have to go figure out how they're going to make something happen so that they can get the job they need to get done.
Yes.
So yeah, to me, that Nursing MacGyver is that show where you could highlight all the unique facets of healthcare and all the unique ways nurses figure out how to make it work.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they do. I don't care. You can give a nurse a bad product. This happens all the time. You can give nurses a bad product and tell them this is what you got, and they will hate it. But you know what they're going to do? They're going to rig that thing to make it work the way they need to work. So even if it's bad, it won't matter. They're not going to complain about it. They're not going to send it back. They are going to figure out, how do I make this work best for me? And they are going to develop all kinds of ways to make it work best for their patient, to get it to work. And they don't care that it's bad. They'll never put in a ticket. They'll never take the time to go back and say, hey, that system's busted. They're going to say, okay, cool. You told me I have to use this. I'm going to use this, but I'm going to rig it X, Y, and Z way so that it makes sense for me. And when I use it, it works the way I need it to work, because the way you gave it to me doesn't work right.
But if you talk to me and ask me about it, I'm going to tell you.
Right. I'm going to tell you up front why this product should have never come to me in the first place.
And how it can be better.
Right. But after the fact, oftentimes they're not going to talk to you about it because they're just frustrated and they're just going to do it. Right. Because nurses, they get the work done. No matter what anybody says, that's what a nurse does. At the end of the day, they just need to get the work done. So they are going to be in there doing whatever they got to do to get it done.
Yes, I love it. Yes, that is who we are. I'm so happy to have spoken with you today. We are coming pretty much down to the end of this episode. I've so enjoyed hearing all about your experiences and just the knowledge about AI, about nurse informatics, how people can get into it, what kind of skills they need. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. A couple more things. Where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a message and ask me any questions you have. And I'm happy to connect, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Awesome. Guys, so it's Robin Gadd-Lane on LinkedIn. And the last question is, who would you recommend to be a guest on my show?
So, I think an interesting field that a lot of people don't think about is nursing triage. Nursing triage is a world that a lot of people, when you talk about remote jobs, don't know that there is a remote job out there that is leveraging a nurse's skill to analyze a patient over a phone. So if I was to give you a person that I think would be a great connection point, I would tell you to reach out to Wendy Watson.
Wendy Watson. Is that? Okay. Wendy Watson, if you're watching, I'm going to reach out to you. Thank you so much, Robin. It's been such a pleasure having you here. Guys, please give it up for my guest, Robin. And be sure to connect with her on LinkedIn if you have any questions about becoming a nurse informaticist. And it's been such a joy, such a pleasure talking with you. And guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for hanging with me till the end. I hope you gained some valuable insight into the world of nursing. If today's episode inspired you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear about the amazing work nurses are doing. Let's keep breaking stereotypes and reshaping the narrative together. I'll see you next time.